Well, welcome everyone to SCbio's latest installment of our webinar series. I'm Erin Ford, Executive Vice President of SCbio, and today we're going to be talking about regulatory guidance in response to COVID-19. As many of you know, we here at SCbio have been answering a lot of calls and emails with people asking questions about how they can help. We've been working with our partners at the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the South Carolina Hospital Association, South Carolina Manufacturing Alliance, as well as our partners at the South Carolina Department of Commerce. We have a lot of great people really trying to help our industry and those also that are interested in pivoting and sort of adding lines that can be helpful to fight this crisis, whether it's making hand sanitizer or face shields, many things that our innovative folks here in South Carolina are trying to construct to help us all as we battle this coronavirus. So I am pleased to have with us today our members and investors with Medpoint CEO Rich Alberti and also Ruben Lawson, who is a consultant with Medpoint. We have a lot of great folks on our board of directors and our members that are doing just this, responding to questions to help folks along this route to contribute. So I'm going to hand it over to Rich to give us an overview to understand a little bit more about Medpoint and how they can help, generally speaking.
Thank you, Erin, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the call. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the team at SCbio for pulling this important meeting together. It really, truly is an honor to be here as we work side by side in a quest to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope that everyone on the call is doing well under these challenging circumstances. I'd like to just start off with a brief introduction of Medpoint. For almost 20 years now, we've been providing expert consulting, training, and recruiting services to clients in the life sciences industry, specializing in regulatory affairs, quality systems, and clinical strategy. We're a global business with over 180 consultants around the world, and our headquarters is based right here in beautiful Greenville, South Carolina. You know, as we hear on the news almost every day, there's been a call for businesses to step up and fill the supply gaps to meet the unprecedented demand on equipment and supplies to help the battle against COVID-19. Many companies are willing and able to step in, but may be unsure how to navigate the FDA pathways. The good news is that FDA has been responsive in establishing streamlined requirements for getting these products onto the market. It's by no means a free-for-all, but in many cases, the pathway to market has become simpler in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. So with us today to discuss some particulars around FDA's emergency use authorization process and the associated guidances is Medpoint consultant Ruben Lawson. Ruben's a regulatory professional with more than 20 years in the medical device industry, and he has extensive experience in interpreting and applying FDA regulations and guidance to product development and commercialization. So please join me in welcoming Ruben to the conference here. Ruben.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate those kind words. And thank you all for joining. I think I speak also for Rich when I say thank you for taking part in this activity and doing what you can to help the country out during this time of need. At a high level, from a regulatory perspective, what we're seeing is a really rapid response from the FDA on all fronts for medical devices, pharmaceuticals, OTC products, and they're really responsive, almost unprecedented level of responsiveness and engagement with industry to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. We are seeing them relax certain rules that they have long held through temporary policy documents during the crisis, some of which we'll touch on in this call. It's important to keep in mind that they're not abandoning the rulebook. Every decision FDA makes is based first and foremost on data and how that applies to their risk-benefit calculus. And while they seem to be refactoring their tolerance for risk during COVID-19, they're doing so while ensuring rules are still followed. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, great. Well, Ruben, to start us off, I know that what really got us together with Medpoint initially is I was getting a lot of calls from folks that normally are not in this business or actually are in the life science industry, and they wanted to make hand sanitizer. And so there are strict guidelines for that overall, though now, as you mentioned, FDA is relaxing some of those in this response. though there are certain things you've got to do. So could you talk in particular about that to start us off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Erin. The FDA has released on March 20th a temporary policy for the temporary production of hand sanitizers, bringing them to market for companies that are not normally engaged in this type of activity. The guidance is a great one-stop shop. It provides fairly direct instructions on how to bring hand sanitizers to market. All the requirements are distilled down into the one guidance document, which makes it an essential resource if you're looking to pivot manufacturing at your site. The guidance document, the temporary policy document rather, defines the ingredients they recommend you work with, the formulation they recommend you use, the requirements for documenting your manufacturing process and controls. They talk to the requirements for conditions of manufacturing. Obviously, your facility must be sanitary and use equipment fit for the purpose. They talk about the requirements for product release testing using accurate tools to ensure the hand sanitizer you make meets their expectations. They also provide in this guidance document the labeling that must be adhered or affixed to the device, to the hand sanitizer rather. They do include ongoing requirements for the firm to register with FDA as an OTC drug manufacturer. And they do require that you put processes in place for adverse event reporting. So complaint reporting, if something goes wrong, a customer calls up, you have to have a process in place to ensure that FDA is made aware of it. Now, for those who are already in the OTC space, this might seem like a large chunk of business as usual. What FDA seems to be setting aside are their expectations for supporting processes that a manufacturer might be expected to have in place. The focus here is on ensuring quality product comes to market for the duration of the emergency with minimal additional overhead needed for emergent manufacturers. An analogy that may help you conceptually, if in the wake of COVID-19 and reduced traffic flows on the freeways, your local highway patrol releases guidance telling you they aren't going to issue tickets as long as you stay reasonably close to the posted speed limits and your tags aren't too expired.
That's a good analogy. I think that helps folks understand, especially those that maybe, we hear of distilleries that are looking to help out and those type of entities. And so there are some basic things that we have to do. Though, as you indicated, FDA, we all are trying to loosen things a little bit so that folks can contribute. One of the other requests, and even before I forgot to mention that we also have some, you can ask us any questions that you would like. We are on Facebook Live. So we want to acknowledge that as well. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment, or if you're watching us on the webinar, also there at the bottom of your screen, you're able to ask some questions. One of the next questions I do have is that we have been searching for, and everyone has heard, for PPE equipment. And a lot of people are stepping up to make those type of items. Sewing their own face masks, or just creating face shields sort of, in a warehouse, or so what are some of the guidelines that are being issued in response to this?
So FDA's taking a slightly different tack for PPE. They're addressing the shortages there in three primary ways. First and foremost, they're working with textile and clothing manufacturers to repurpose lines of manufacturing for manufacturing of masks. So if you are a textile manufacturer and you haven't had FDA reach out, you can actually reach out to them directly, and we'll provide an email address. There's one available in the various links to start that conversation. I'm sure they'd be very responsive and willing to hear from you. If you aren't necessarily engaged in textile and clothing, but you have fairly strong distribution importation channels, FDA has established an importation guidance in partnership with Customs and Border Patrol to facilitate the import of PPE. And what this really streamlines and removes is the holdup of product at the border as you try to bring it into the country. In general, for industry, for the hospital side, the healthcare side, they've issued conservation strategies in concert with the CDC for use of PPE, such as face masks. This essentially boils down to recommending limited reuse prior to discarding. And of note, though perhaps not necessarily of interest to those on the call, they recently granted an emergency authorization use for a decontamination process for reprocessing N95 face masks. And I don't know if you've seen that in the news. The company's name is Patel. They use a hydrogen peroxide vapor system. Finally, to the extent that you have some 3D printing capabilities, FDA has partnered with the VA, NIH, and an organization called America Makes for collaborative sharing of 3D printing technologies in the medical device space. Now, FDA's perspective when it comes to PPE is that 3D printing is not likely able to wholly reproduce PPE. And so they recommend that 3D printing companies partner with relevant medical device manufacturers or reach out to FDA through an email address that they've set up specifically for that purpose.
So when we talk about this innovation happening from folks that may not be in our field in general, we have from swabs, we talk about face masks, sort of what is the level, or what would you encourage folks to do that are looking to, may have an idea that they just not quite sure though what to do next? What would be your advice as far as what path to follow to not try to create something that's already been created, or that may not be beneficial according to FDA?
Or to work on something that requires some level of pre-market notification or engagement with the agency ahead of time. And it depends is a term I throw around a lot, and in this case, it very much depends on the solution that you're working on and where you are in the process. Your best starting point is, there's two really, but your first one is a regulatory analysis of the solution, potential product code, classification, and from there that gives you the best approach to engage the agency. Medpoint has a large number of consultants who can rapidly support your activities. The second approach, if you can directly support ongoing initiatives around PPE or hand sanitizer, is to reach out directly to FDA. And if you don't know what to say or who to ask, then we can certainly help with that. As I said earlier, while FDA's normal risk-benefit calculus has been refactored, they're still doing the math. They continue to focus on a data-driven approach. So what they really want to see is that no new or unacceptable risks are introduced. And if you may have seen the news, they're very quick to pounce on manufacturers claiming that their product treated or prevented COVID-19 fairly early on in the crisis. To the extent that any new products that you're working on would require pre-market notification through 510K or the PMA process, it is reasonable to think that the agency can prioritize and support activity up to and including emergency use authorization. So see Battelle's decontamination process. But they aren't going to waive the activity. You do still need to engage them. For PPE solutions, partnering directly with the agency should yield some immediate feedback and support. They're currently actively engaged in that space already. If you're a manufacturer of medical devices, do be aware of the agency's guidance on change control with respect to COVID-19. They are tacitly encouraging manufacturers to make changes to products where appropriate, and including limited labeling changes to directly address COVID-19. So a change that might previously have triggered a 510K could be implemented without first going through a 510K, though there would be some expectation of conversations with the agency throughout the process.
I think that's very helpful, especially to our life science industry companies that are currently manufacturing, and then, like you said, adding lines or changing something to what they're doing now to help in this crisis situation. One of the things you mentioned was 3D printing, and we have other folks that are coming to us with different items. So one in particular is that sort of 3-layer mask as opposed to the N95. And I know Rich had some thoughts on that, and I wanted to get his comment as far as those sort of differences.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to learn that myself earlier in the week, and found a really good resource online that was a webinar on the differences, first and foremost, between the types of masks that are available out there. You'll see before we close, I've included a link to that for easy reference, but it really gets down to the level of testing and the intended purpose of the two different kinds of masks, where that 3-ply mask that you see a lot of people wearing while walking down the street is really intended to protect others from you being contaminated. It doesn't really protect yourself, which is really interesting. And then the N95 mask is actually a respirator, and that is what is worn to protect yourself from being contaminated by someone else. So lots of testing requirements that go along with that, and nuances, and it's really, I would encourage everybody to go to that website, and again, the link is at the end of the presentation here, just to educate yourselves so that you can be prepared yourself as well as your family members and others around you. So there are different things that FDA is doing to help people get these masks approved, but it's important to understand what the purpose of the mask is first and foremost.
Thank you, Rich. Well, we do have one question that has come in, and I know Lee. So the question is, I can easily modify my equipment to produce ventilators. Note an additional programming is needed for full vent capabilities. Can you address a potential FDA process, testing requirements, documentation, et cetera, that might be required for ventilators? So Ruben or Rich, what would be your response?
Sure, I'll take that. And thanks for stepping up like that, Lee. We all appreciate it. I think from my perspective, ventilators are class 2 devices. Your best bet right now would be partnering with a existing medical device manufacturer and building ventilators to their specifications, so acting as a subcomponent manufacturer for them. They certainly need the help, and they surely would appreciate having another capable supplier to supply goods that meet their specifications. That would require that's probably the easiest path. In terms of directly producing, manufacturing the ventilators, there would be some level of engagement needed with FDA. You'd certainly start out talking to them about the ventilators. They would expedite the process, I would expect, in this environment. They would set in place the testing strategies you'd need to have in place. And it might be a lot more complex to go down that route because you might be creating something new in terms of specifications compared to products already on the market. So you just want to be aware of that if you could retool your manufacturing line to build to someone else's spec, that might be a slightly easier way to go, much as GM is doing or Tesla is promising to do.
Okay, thank you, Ruben, for that insight. And I think we have another question here. My manufacturing facility can easily and quickly be capable of producing face shields. We would not require tooling and would be able to be up and running in 1 week. What is the path we should specifically be heading down? Thank you. And that is from Marie. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. So face shields are, I believe, class 1 devices. It's relatively straightforward to bring them to market. Again, engaging with FDA to let them know what you're doing and how you can help to see if they're open to that type of product would be the first course of action. They have email addresses that they're reasonably responsive to, and would certainly, I think, appreciate the feedback. And if you'd like to know how to engage, who to engage, then we can certainly help with that.
Okay. I think those are the only questions that I see as of now, and haven't heard any from our Facebook Live audience as of yet. As we have mentioned, we are recording this, so this will be available for folks afterwards. And before we get to Rich, I don't know if Ruben, if we don't get any other live questions here, any sort of final thoughts before we wrap up?
So I think you're all thinking in the right area here. You're looking to leverage your internal competencies and to see how you can help. FDA is, like I said, there's an unprecedented level of engagement from the agency in this time. And this isn't often the case, so take full use of that and be willing to work with the agency, partner with them, partner with other medical device manufacturers, and together we can overcome this.
Thank you, Ruben, very much. And Rich, I know I wanted to ask you also, both you and Ruben have such a great experience and been in this industry for many, many years. So I'd like just some input and thoughts from you, Rich. And also, I know you have some links and information you'd want to share as well that we can share with the audience.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's safe to say that this is an unprecedented, crazy time for everybody, right? There's a lot of fear and a lot of concern, and to watch U.S. businesses rise up to the occasion to step in and fill the gaps is really, really incredible to see. And you know, there's business opportunity here, right? But first and foremost, it's a humanitarian effort, right? To be able to support the sick and the people that are in the hospitals and protect the healthcare workers. So it's important in parting here that we stay in touch with what the FDA is putting out, because it changes every day. We just recently, as late as last night, had a contact with someone who had manufactured a batch of hand sanitizer and was looking for some input on how to release product. And there was a new guidance that was put out from FDA just yesterday that is going to hopefully enable them to be able to ship that product and get it out to the market. So, you know, it's a very dynamic situation. It's very fluid. It changes every single day. I've included on the link page a way to sign up for the FDA alerts that go out and get published on sometimes multiple times a day. It may fill up your inbox, but it's a great way to see what others are doing, and it's a great way to understand what you need to do to be able to market the product. So again, FDA's purview is to make sure that the public health is protected and that the products that we're putting out there are safe and effective. And that's what they're going to do. So they're going to do that whether it's an emergency use authorization or not. So it's important to understand the requirements specific to what you're intending to put out into the marketplace. And then the other piece that kind of is a wraparound on all of this is that getting to market under an emergency use authorization is not a permanent authorization. It's a short-term, immediate need, help to address the urgent needs. And then FDA is going to expect you to catch up to their normal requirements when it happens. So I don't think we said that yet. I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. Other than that, I think it's great to see that the level of interest and the level of engagement of industry. It's very exciting.
Well, great. And then I think if we could show the links that we have that you have mentioned here today to help folks understand even more and have the direct information. We will also have this on our website at scbio.org on our coronavirus specific page. And so seeing these links is very helpful. Anyone you want to point out in particular, Rich, that you had referred to?
Well, I think there's some product specific links here, but the first one on the list here is the important one to be able to plug in and get those automated notifications that come to you directly. And again, at any point, our contact information was on the opening slide. And feel free to reach out to me directly or to Ruben directly if you have specific questions on interpretation or if you have any implementation support needs. We've got people all over the country that can help with this stuff. So happy to be part of that solution for in support of your business. So thank you to SCbio again, and thanks to Ruben for including us in the dialogue here.
Yes,
Glad
thank you
here.
both, Rich and Ruben, today for your insight. As we mentioned, we have a lot of folks, a great pool of talent from our membership and from our board of directors that can help us navigate this crisis as folks are creating opportunities to help. And to that point, we're going to continue our webinar series. So this Friday at 10 a.m., we'll be talking to leadership from both the National Bio Organization and AdvaMed, of which SCbio is a state affiliate. And we had a preview conversation this morning, and it'll be one not to miss. Very interesting to get the insider sort of information of what's happening on a national level in DC in regards to innovation and the solutions being determined and processed at that national level, and how South Carolina can contribute as well. So thank you for tuning in, whether you're live on Facebook or you're watching us on recording. We hope to see you again soon. Again, I'm Erin Ford, Executive Vice President of SCbio. We'll see you again soon.